The house was eerily silent when my parents left for their vacation. It was my first time staying home alone, and I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. Freedom was enticing, but the solitude of our old, creaky house had always unsettled me. The echoes of its history seemed to whisper in every corner, but I brushed off my apprehensions, reassuring myself it was just an old house. That first night, the rain began to fall, tapping against the windows in a rhythmic, almost soothing pattern. I settled into the living room, the glow of the TV providing some comfort against the encroaching darkness. The silence was palpable, broken only by the occasional creak of the house settling and the distant rumble of thunder. Hours passed, and the movie I was watching ended, leaving the room plunged into a silence that felt heavier than before. I switched off the TV and sat there for a moment, listening to the rain. That's when I heard it, the faint sound of laughter. It was so soft that I almost thought I imagined it. I muted the TV and strained my ears. There it was again, a muted conversation followed by a burst of laughter, but it sounded like it was coming from inside the house. A chill ran down my spine as I stood up and looked around, my heart pounding. I walked through the living room, peering into the kitchen and down the hallway. Everything was as it should be, empty. I convinced myself it was just the sound of the rain playing tricks on my mind and headed upstairs to my room. Lying in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The shadows seemed to dance on the walls, and the silence was deafening. Just as I was about to drift off, I heard the sound again. This time it was clearer, muffled voices, almost as if a group of people were having a conversation in the next room. I bolted upright, my pulse racing. I grabbed the baseball bat from under my bed and crept out into the hallway. The sound seemed to be coming from my parents' bedroom. I swallowed hard, summoning all my courage, and slowly pushed the door open. The room was dark, illuminated only by the faint moonlight seeping through the curtains. I flicked on the light, and the room appeared as normal, neatly made bed, no signs of anyone else being there. I felt a rush of relief mixed with confusion. Maybe I was just tired and hearing things? I turned off the light and closed the door, heading back to my room. As I passed by the mirror in the hallway, something caught my eye. I stopped and looked closer, my breath catching in my throat. In the reflection, I saw a shadowy figure standing at the end of the hallway, its form barely distinguishable in the dim light. My heart skipped a beat, and I spun around, bat raised, ready to defend myself. But there was no one there. The hallway was empty, yet the reflection had been unmistakable. I backed away slowly, my eyes darting around, every hair on my body standing on end. I could still hear the muted laughter, growing louder, more insistent. It wasn't just in my head, someone, or something, was in the house with me. I raced back to my room, slamming the door shut and locking it. My mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking, and dialed my parents' number, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic set in, and I texted them frantically, hoping for a quick response. As I sat there, clutching the bat, the voices grew louder, now right outside my door. They were talking in hushed tones, but I couldn't make out the words. Then, a gentle knock on my door sent a jolt of terror through me. I held my breath, my eyes locked on the door handle, which slowly began to turn. I stared at the door handle as it slowly turned, the metallic click echoing in the oppressive silence of my room. The door creaked open just a sliver, and I could see a shadow moving on the other side. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I tightened my grip on the bat, ready to swing at whatever might come through. But then, just as suddenly as it had started to turn, the door handle stopped and the door slowly creaked shut again. The voices outside my room subsided into a low murmur, almost as if they were retreating. I stood frozen for what felt like an eternity, straining my ears to catch any sound. There was nothing, just an unnerving silence. I cautiously approached the door and pressed my ear against it. The hallway was quiet. Summoning every ounce of courage, I unlocked the door and swung it open, bat raised, ready for whatever was out there. But the hallway was empty. The house was silent once again. I stepped out, my footsteps echoing softly. The house felt different, heavier, as if it was holding its breath. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I decided to check every room to make sure I was alone. Starting with my parents' bedroom again, I flicked on the light and thoroughly searched every corner, every closet. Nothing. I moved to the guest bedroom, the bathroom, the study, every room was empty. Finally, I made my way downstairs, checking the living room, kitchen, and dining room. Still nothing. The sense of relief was almost overwhelming, but it was tainted by the nagging feeling that something was still wrong. I returned to the living room and sat on the couch, trying to calm my racing heart. Maybe it was just my imagination. Maybe the old house was playing tricks on me. I picked up the remote and turned on the TV, hoping to drown out the silence with some mindless noise. As I flipped through the channels, I noticed something strange. The screen flickered and static filled the room. The channels seemed to be changing on their own, cycling through images of old black and white movies, grainy news footage, and then, a face. A pale, ghostly face staring directly at me through the screen. Its eyes were hollow, its mouth twisted into a grotesque smile. I dropped the remote in shock, the image searing into my brain. The TV went black, leaving me in the dark with my own frantic breathing. I scrambled to pick up the remote and turn the TV off, but it wouldn't respond. The screen remained blank, yet I could feel the presence of that face still watching me. The laughter started again, this time louder and more sinister. It filled the room, bouncing off the walls, growing in intensity. Desperate, I ran to the kitchen to turn on all the lights. The bright fluorescent light flickered before it steadied, casting a harsh glow over the room. I felt a bit safer in the light, but the laughter persisted, echoing through the house. I grabbed my phone and dialed my best friend, Tom. He answered on the third ring. "Hey, man, what's up?" "Tom, you need to come over. Something weird is happening here," I said, my voice trembling. "Whoa, slow down. What's going on?" "I keep hearing voices and laughter, and I swear I saw someone in the house, but when I checked, no one was there. And the TV, it showed this face, like a ghost or something. Please, just come over." Tom paused, sensing the fear in my voice. "All right, I'm on my way. Stay calm, lock the doors, and wait for me." I hung up, feeling slightly better knowing that Tom was coming. I double-checked the locks on all the doors and windows, making sure everything was secure. The laughter had stopped, but the house felt more oppressive than ever. I sat in the kitchen, every muscle tense, waiting for Tom. Minutes felt like hours, and then I heard a knock at the front door. I jumped up, relieved, and rushed to open it. But as I reached for the handle, I froze. The door wasn't locked anymore. It was slightly ajar, and through the crack, I could see a figure standing on the porch, its face obscured by shadow. My heart pounded in my chest as I slowly opened the door wider, the figure becoming clearer. It wasn't Tom. It was the same ghostly face from the TV, now staring at me from the other side of the threshold, its eyes hollow and unblinking, its mouth stretched into that same twisted smile. Before I could react, it lunged at me, and everything went black. I woke up on the cold, hard floor of the living room. My head was throbbing, and my vision was blurry. The house was dark and silent once more, save for the persistent rain tapping against the windows. I struggled to my feet, my mind racing to piece together what had happened. The last thing I remembered was that grotesque face lunging at me. I felt my pockets for my phone, but it was gone. Panic surged through me. Had it been a nightmare? A hallucination? My thoughts were interrupted by a soft creak coming from the staircase. My breath caught in my throat as I turned toward the sound. A shadow was moving down the stairs, slow and deliberate. Grabbing the nearest object, a heavy candlestick from the mantel, I backed into the corner of the room, trying to make myself as small as possible. The shadow reached the bottom of the stairs and stepped into the dim light filtering through the windows. It was Tom. "Tom!" I cried out, relief washing over me. "Thank God, you're here." Tom looked at me, his face pale and drawn. "Dude, what happened to you? Your front door was wide open. And you were passed out on the floor." "I don't know," I stammered, my voice shaking. "There was this thing. It wasn't human. It attacked me." Tom's eyes widened with fear and disbelief. "We need to get out of here, man. This place isn't safe." As he spoke, the laughter started again, this time louder and more menacing. Tom and I exchanged terrified glances. He grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the door, but as we reached it, it slammed shut with a force that shook the house. We were trapped. Tom frantically tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. The laughter grew louder, echoing through the house, and the air grew colder. I could see my breath fogging in front of me. The shadows seemed to grow, creeping along the walls and floor, enveloping us in darkness. "We need to find another way out," Tom said, his voice trembling. "Let's try the back door." We ran through the house, the oppressive darkness closing in around us. The kitchen door was our only hope. As we approached, the lights flickered, and the temperature dropped even further. We reached the door, but it too was locked tight, refusing to open no matter how hard we pulled. A sudden crash came from behind us. We turned to see the figure from the TV standing in the doorway, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. Its mouth opened, and a chilling, guttural laugh filled the room. We backed away, trapped between the figure and the locked door. "There's no escape," the figure whispered, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. "This house is ours." Tom and I looked at each other, fear etched into our faces. Desperation took over, and we started searching the kitchen for anything that could be used as a weapon or a way out. I grabbed a knife from the counter, and Tom found a heavy frying pan. The figure advanced slowly, its eyes never leaving us. "We need to fight," Tom said, his voice steadier than I felt. As the figure drew closer, I could see it more clearly. Its skin was pale and stretched tight over its bones, its eyes sunken and black. It seemed to radiate an aura of cold and darkness, and the closer it got, the more my fear threatened to paralyze me. Tom swung the frying pan with all his might, but it passed through the figure as if it were made of smoke. The figure's eyes glowed brighter, and it reached out a skeletal hand toward Tom. I lunged forward with the knife, aiming for its heart, but my hand passed through it as well, and I stumbled, falling to the floor. The figure's laugh grew louder, echoing through the house. "You cannot harm me," it hissed. "I am beyond your reach." Desperation clawed at my chest as I struggled to my feet. Tom and I backed into the corner, our makeshift weapons useless. The figure loomed over us, its malevolent presence suffocating. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the house, and the front door burst open. A beam of light cut through the darkness, and a voice called out, "Police. Is anyone here?" The figure recoiled, its eyes narrowing with anger. It began to dissolve into the shadows, its form dissipating like smoke. Tom and I stood frozen, hardly daring to believe our luck as the police officers entered the house, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. "Are you boys all right?" one of the officers asked, concern etched on his face. We were attacked," I stammered, still in shock. "There's something in this house. It tried to kill us." The officers exchanged a skeptical glance. "All right, let's get you both out of here," the other officer said, guiding us toward the front door. "We'll take a look around and make sure it's safe." As we stepped outside into the rain, the oppressive weight of the house lifted slightly. Tom and I exchanged a look, our fear still palpable. Whatever was in that house wasn't gone, it was still lurking in the shadows, waiting for the next opportunity to strike. We were safe for now, but deep down, I knew this was far from over. The days that followed were a blur of anxiety and unease. Despite Dr. Hart's assurance that the spirits were freed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. The house might have been quiet, but the shadows of that night haunted my every waking moment. Tom and I tried to resume our normal lives, but the fear lingered, always just beneath the surface. We stayed away from my house, opting instead to crash at Tom's place or with other friends. The thought of returning to that place filled me with a dread I couldn't ignore. A week later, I received a call from Dr. Hart. Her voice was calm, but there was an urgency to her words. "We need to meet. There's something I need to show you." We agreed to meet at a local cafe. When Tom and I arrived, Dr. Hart was already there, her face pale and drawn. She placed a stack of old documents and photographs on the table between us. "I've been researching the history of your house more thoroughly," she began. What we encountered was only the tip of the iceberg. She spread out the photographs, black and white images of the asylum, the patients, and the doctor who had run the place. Among them was a photograph that sent a chill down my spine. It was the face from the TV, the face that had attacked me. The doctor. This man was more than just a sadistic caretaker, Dr. Hart explained. He was involved in dark rituals, attempting to bind the spirits of his victims to the house, trapping them for eternity. When we performed the ritual, we freed the patient's spirits, but we also disrupted the binding. Now, the doctor himself is free. Tom and I exchanged horrified glances. "So, what does that mean? Is he back?" Dr. Hart nodded grimly. "Yes. And he's more dangerous than ever. His spirit is vengeful, filled with centuries of rage and hatred. We need to perform another ritual, one specifically designed to banish him for good. But it will be dangerous." Despite our fear, we agreed. We had to end this once and for all. Dr. Hart gathered her team, and we prepared to return to the house. As we approached, the once peaceful facade now seemed menacing, the windows like dark, soulless eyes watching our every move. Inside, the house was deathly silent. The air was thick with tension, as if the house itself was holding its breath. We set up the candles and symbols once more, this time in the basement, the heart of the darkness. Dr. Hart explained that the ritual required all of us to stay within the circle, no matter what happened. We formed the circle and began. Dr. Hart's chants filled the air, the candles flickering wildly. The temperature plummeted, and the shadows grew darker, more oppressive. As the ritual progressed, the ground beneath us began to tremble, and a low, guttural growl echoed through the basement. Suddenly, the doctor appeared. His ghostly figure was more solid than before, his eyes burning with a malevolent light. He lunged at us, but the circle held him back, the candles flaring with each of his attempts to break through. "Continue the chant," Dr. Hart shouted, her voice strained. We chanted louder, our voices mingling with Dr. Hart's. The doctor's fury grew, his form becoming more twisted and monstrous. He clawed at the air, his screams of rage reverberating through the basement. The candles flickered violently, and the ground shook harder. I felt a hand brush against my leg, cold and clammy. I looked down to see spectral hands reaching up from the floor, grasping at us, trying to pull us into the darkness. I gritted my teeth and continued chanting, refusing to let go of Tom's hand. The air grew thick with the smell of decay, and the doctor's screams reached a fever pitch. The circle of light from the candles pulsed, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. With one final, deafening chant, a blinding light filled the room. The shadows dissipated, the voices silenced, and the oppressive weight lifted. We were left gasping, the house now eerily quiet. "It's done," Dr. Hart said, her voice trembling with exhaustion. "The spirits are free." Tom and I looked at each other, relief and disbelief etched on our faces. We thanked Dr. Hart and her team, who promised to monitor the house for any residual activity. As we left the house, I couldn't help but glance back one last time. The sun was rising, casting a warm glow over the old building. It looked peaceful, almost inviting. But I knew better. The memories of what had happened there would stay with me forever. However, as we drove away, a chilling thought crept into my mind. Had we truly freed the spirits? Or had we merely awakened something far more sinister, something waiting for the right moment to strike again? Only time would tell. But for now, we were free. And that was enough.